Welcome back, friends, to the fourth installment of our summer video series, Fantastic Beasts and How to Draw Them. We only have one more week after this. My name is Mr. J, and I'll be leading you through our lessons each week. I want to show you that anybody can draw something cool. So we're just using a black pen as always, and we're going to be drawing with some simple lines. Although you can see, the shapes that we're using to start our drawings are becoming a little bit more complicated. We've been using a lot of triangles, which are really good for creating the shapes of bodies sometimes. And in fact, unlike last time, we were drawing sort of a tree person. This time is going to look even more like a regular person, kind of working our way up to that. So you see, for this week, we have a big upside down triangle kind of in the middle of our page here. Not as tall as the one we used last week. We have a smaller triangle sort of on the top of that one. See, it's a little off-center. It's not quite in the middle. It's a little bit to the right. And then we have this other smaller triangle, about the same size as that, but flipped upside down, pretty close to the bottom of that first bigger triangle. So this week, we're going to be drawing a creature that is maybe a little bit different than what we think of when we think of fantasy beasts, but it is nonetheless a creature that is from the imagination. We're going to be drawing a genie. Most of you probably know this creature from perhaps the Aladdin movie, but it also appears in other places. For one, you might have encountered a genie in our Journey Through the Imagination challenge as a part of this year's summer reading program. But they also appear in the Dungeons and Dragons game that I've mentioned a few times so far. And in that game, they actually are sort of elemental creatures. They come in different forms depending on the elements that they use, those being fire, earth, wind, water. The genies that we're familiar with, sometimes known as jinn or jinnies, that's with a D at the beginning. Those creatures would tend to be air elemental creatures. So we're going to draw an air elemental genie today. In the end, it might look a little bit, it might remind you a little bit about the of the Aladdin genie, but not quite. So let's get started. The first thing we're going to do is over on the right top corner of this triangle, we're going to start with what's eventually going to kind of become a vest. And we're going to start sort of in the middle of this line between that triangle and the corner. And we're just going to draw a simple straight line over to the corner of that triangle. And now from here, we're going to do kind of a weird shape. But follow me. To start, we're going to do about a quarter of a circle that just comes down and it's going to wrap down underneath the point of this triangle. We're going to leave maybe about, well, let's say that much space. Again, as always, doesn't need to be perfect. From here, we're going to take that and do, you see it's got a slight curve to it, but we're going to stop right about the middle of that bigger triangle. And from there, we're just going to do a line kind of like that, and we're going to go right past the edge of that triangle. Nice and simple like. Now let's come back up to the corner here, and we're going to do another sort of arc that's going to kind of come inward and then also end a little ways above this other one. So start at that corner, come in, and end a little ways above that other line. So we're going to go like that. And now we can connect those two. And remember, when we're doing clothes, they often have, waves and wrinkles to them, which is why we have sort of drawn these things with curves and waves. Now we're going to do the first arm here. And it's going to come down, and we're going to do, start here at the corner again. We're going to do one bump, a second bump, and then we're going to sort of come straight down a little bit, and we're going to end near the top of this other triangle. But for frame of reference, so what I'd like you to do is when you do your first bump and your second bump, that second bump we're going to end, it's going to be sort of in line with the top of this triangle. So let's just keep that in mind. It's going to come about halfway down that second bump. So we'll go one bump, two bumps. And you see your shapes can be a little bit different. That's no big deal, but we're about maybe a little bit less than halfway down in this case, but not too far from the top of that, being in line with the top of that triangle either. So from here, we're going to come out again a little bit, but then sort of come straight down like that. And again, lines don't need to be perfect. So from here, we're going to do the top of a cuff. And now if you remember the genie in Aladdin, he had cuffs on his wrists too. So this top is going to be kind of in line with the top of this triangle. So we're just going to do an arc kind of like that. It's right over the top of that triangle. And let's just connect it so it looks sort of like that. And then we're going to bring some lines down from that are going to basically come straight down to the edges of this triangle. So we'll do like that. And then we'll do like that. And then we're going to do a slight upward curve to connect those two lines like that. And now we're going to draw a hand here, which can be a pretty tough thing to draw, but in this case we're going to keep it kind of simple. We're going to start at this corner, and we're going to sort of do some fingers down this way. So the hand is going to have the fingers coming down this way, and then we'll have a little thumb sticking out that way. But let's start at about this corner, do an angle to the right, and come back for, you can see that's going to be the shape of the inside of a hand. But then let's just curve that up, and then we'll bring it back a little bit. So that indicates, the way that our fingers bend. Now the next fingers we're going to sort of start, they're going to be a little bit behind the first one. So we don't need to draw all that first line. It's going to be mostly focused on that second line that we did. So we'll do that, and you can see each time I start the bend, it's just before the bottom of that triangle. And then the pinky is the smallest finger, so it'll be shorter than the rest. You can see in this case, I came right up to the corner of that triangle and then came back and followed that line. Now from over here, what we're going to do is sort of do the thumb in the opposite angle. Let's just start right at the top here, and we'll come down with an opposite angle and then come up with the thumb. And a simple sort of line around like that, and you can see we have what looks more or less like a hand. Again, doesn't need to be perfect because our brains are pretty good at figuring out what these things are supposed to look like. So we're going to do the other side of the arm here. We'll come back up to this side line of this triangle, about halfway between that top corner and where we ended our vest. And what we're going to do is just kind of come inward and then bend down and connect right there. So we'll come inward and then bend down and connect right there. And that's going to be the first arm of the genie. So now let's just take a second to connect this up to the arm. Real simple. And now we've kind of got one side started. So good work. Coming back to the other side here, about halfway on this line, let's do the other side of the vest, but this is sort of on the other side of the body, so we're going to see how it ends up looking pretty different. But we start in a similar place, right? So what we're going to come down, do is come down and just come a little bit past the corner or the edge of this triangle and come into a corner, which we're then going to connect back, but we're going to stop when we do that at this line. So you'll see what I do. Come down, flare out, kind of like a stretched out S, right? And then we're going to just do a downward arc like that, stopping right at that line, like I said. Now we're going to come back to this corner here, and we're going to sort of follow up some of this line sort of parallel like we've learned. But when we do, we're going to come out to the right here with a point, and it's going to be kind of across from this point that we drew on that side of the vest. So we'll come up this way, and then we're going to go like that. And we're going to not quite connect these two lines yet. We're going to leave some space there for a future embellishment and for when we draw, of course, the head. But on the other side here, real quick, why don't we draw the other arm? We're going to, of course, start where we started at the top of this triangle. And this is not going to need to be perfect either, because again, arms, depending on the way that they move, they look different. So we're going to start here, and we're going to sort of do a bump down like we did on this side, but we're going to end our first bump right at the side of that triangle. So you see we do kind of one bump like that. And then from here, let's do mostly a straight line that's going to come just a little ways past the bottom of the vest here. It's going to start with a slight curve, kind of like we did on this line. It starts with a slight curve, but then it comes straight down. So we're going to come like that. And now, of course, we need to have the other wrist brace here. So this one's going to be in kind of a, let's do sort of a slight downward angle. And you can see how we have this little shape at the top. So let's just repeat that, like that. And this one's going to look a little bit smaller because this arm is sort of in the back and further away. So that's the idea there. Let's do two lines that kind of come down like that. Connect them with the same shape at the bottom. And now we're going to do kind of a funny hand shape, sort of like we did last week with the treant, if you remember. We didn't draw the full details of the hand. What we're going to do here is kind of come down with one finger and up, come back out this way with a shorter finger for the thumb and up, and then connect. And then to show that, just like he has fingers on this side, let's just do a little finger poking out right there. And that's going to be his sort of backhand that is trailing behind him. Now over here, we're going to just bring this line straight up and connect there, and that shows how his arm is going behind his vest that's sort of flaring out. Now, this genie is going to have sort of a belt or a sash kind of wrapped around him. So we're going to start a little ways below where we finished this vest line, and we're going to do a slight line this way and then curve around. It's almost like we're curving around the side of the triangle here, and we're going to draw it all the way over and connect to sort of where the triangle sticks out of this side of the vest. So we're going to go like that, and we're going to end right there. Now the belt here we're going to just have come down and over and up. So it's sort of like a long kind of like curved rectangle shape almost. Again, it's okay to be a little wavy, a little wrinkly, because these are in fact clothes and that's how they should look. So let's do a line down. You see we're kind of following the side of the triangle. We're going to do a line kind of curved over. You can see just past the side of the triangle there. And then this side, let's do even a little bit more wavy than the first side to indicate the back of the belt there. So great work. Now, why don't we come back up to the top? The bottom of the genie is really easy, right? So we're going to do that last. We're going to come back up and finish the genie's head here because that's otherwise going to be maybe a little bit tough. So the very first thing I'm going to do is we're going to draw a nose, kind of smack dab in the middle of this triangle. And it's going to be real simple looking, just kind of like that, like almost like a J. How about that? So we'll come back and we're going to do the bottom of the face here, and we're going to do that by starting kind of in the middle of this line, and we're going to draw a curve out like that. You can see kind of ending right back where we started. It's sort of like a big letter C. Then we're going to do kind of like a letter U underneath the bottom. And then we're going to do a backwards letter C on the other side over here. And then from here, we're going to kind of make an interesting shape for what's going to amount to a beard here. Obviously, I have a fondness for drawing beards on my creatures. Again, you don't necessarily have to, but for today, I think that's what we're going to do. So we're going to start underneath the nose, put our pen down, and we're going to come out to the left and around and connect up to a point like we did on that. And let's do the same thing on the other side, like that. Now we're going to come back to that first point, and we're going to do almost like a W shape here, except where the sides are like really curved around the middle. So we're going to do like that, and we're going to do like that. You can kind of see how that looks like a W, right? And then let's do a line here for the top of the mouth. We'll do another line for the bottom of the mouth. And that's easy enough to show that the mouth looks kind of open. Now, why don't we draw kind of the outside of the head here. We're just going to draw a nice big upside down U for the top of the head. We're going to start right about where this corner is of the top of the beard, and we're going to end right about at that other corner, and we're again just going to circle around kind of the top of this triangle. So we're going to go just like that. And you can see my corners of the triangle stick out a little bit, but the idea is there. Now up above this nose, let's do some shapes, not unlike this one that we used on that bracer there. These are going to be some eyebrows. So we'll do that, and then like that. So it's just sort of an arc for the eyebrow, and then we're just connecting that along the bottom and making sort of this stretched out oval shape. And then we will do these other ovals, not quite as stretched out. You can see those are going to look like eyes. And then as always, we're going to put our pupils in, which we'll just do as some taller ovals, kind of like that. And that sure does look like the face of a genie, at least for today's genie. So now that we have the head in place, let's get ourselves prepared to finish this side of the vest. The reason why I didn't want to do that quite yet is because we're just going to draw, this genie is going to be wearing a necklace of sorts. So what I'm going to do is draw some circles right around the genie's head. This first one is going to start kind of underneath this cheek. The last one is going to start kind of underneath this other cheek. And they're going to be spaced out a little bit. You'll see what I do. So we're going to do like that, that. That last one didn't actually end up under the cheek too much because I imagined it was going up over the shoulder here. But however yours turned out is fine. Now I'm just going to do some smaller circles to connect these bigger circles. About 2 in between each one. Oh, this one's going to end up with 3. Just because that's how much it needed to fit. And that last one ended up with 1. That's all right. And then from here, now that we've got that in place, let's just draw a curved line that kind of connects right like that. And now you can see that Genie has a bit of a necklace there too. So we're coming together here. Obviously, we can't forget about this side of the Genie's body. So real quick, let's just connect from the vest here down along this side of the triangle. We're going to go past this point where we started the top of the belt and connect to this line, and that will show that it's sort of wrapped around like that. Now, this Genie is going to have sort of a ponytail of sorts, although it's going to be much bigger than your typical ponytail. In fact, it's going to be like a big ribbon of hair coming out of the top of its head. So we have something here to sort of collect the hair, a band of some kind. And then this ribbon of hair is almost going to, it has sort of like a windswept quality to it. And it's going to be long and thin. So what we're going to do is start on this side, and we're going to do like a big fancy kind of S, where we're going to come up and around and down and over, and we're going to end sort of touching our last point along the line that we draw. You'll see. We'll go like that, and then we'll go like that. So it started out like an S, but then we sort of connected there, and that made it look a little bit different, right? Now we're going to start the other side and kind of run parallel up and around this, but the last thing we're going to do is kind of cross this line that we just drew, and also end at this line, and that's going to show the hair sort of curving around itself. So we come up and down and around. At the last second, we're going to cross that line and end right where we started, right there. You can see it's sort of like a ribbon sort of swirling around. Then we're going to, using our eyes, we're going to sort of see, where this line would continue past this, but it's going to go behind the hair, so we're not going to draw a line through the hair. We're going to kind of come down and around like that, and then we'll come over to the other side of the head because it's sort of sticking out behind him, and we'll just do another kind of curvy line, sort of like that. Again, yours can look like whatever, but you can see I started at about the point of where the top of that triangle met the head. And if you end up with that first line on the opposite side, that's a good way to tell that you're coming straight out from behind the head like you would. So now we'll just do this other line. You can see like that's a continuation there. And we're going to come up and essentially just follow that first one. You can see it went a little bit too far, so we're just going to connect them like that. And that's kind of like a big ribbon of hair kind of behind this Genie's head like that. We're going to remember how we did that shape because we're going to use some similar kind of like swirls along the bottom here. In fact, well, why don't we do that? So starting at the bottom of the belt, what I'm going to do is come in a little bit, and I'm just going to do like a big swirl down to a point. Going in just a little bit, and then a big swirl. Let's do kind of like that. And from here, we're going to start back up and kind of follow, except as we go up, it's going to get wider and wider until we get to this last turn here. It's going to kind of come out and sort of be the genie's hip. Um, and you'll see how we need to leave a bit of a extra curve there to show that. So we're going to come up, starts thin, gradually gets thicker until we get all the way up here where we're going to do a curve back, and that's like the genie's hip. So this is most of the genie at this point. So what I'm going to do is start to kind of color things in. So for example, this beard and the hair, I'm going to sort of color black. And I'm going to do, beard hair is like short little strokes. So I'm going to do a bunch of short little strokes until the whole thing is kind of colored, keeping in mind the way that it would come off the face. So kind of looks like that. Maybe it doesn't need to be filled in totally. By leaving some white space, you'll show the way that the hair is not one solid piece necessarily. This long hair is going to be a little bit harder to fill in, but we're just going to take our time and do some nice long lines with our pen that eventually start to color in the hair. And sometimes when it comes to coloring and shading things, we need to have a lot of patience because in order to make it look right, it takes time because there's a lot of tiny little hairs on our heads. And if we're trying to be realistic, it can take a long time to draw them. So let's just spend a little bit of time on that. And now you can see how I've, again, left a little bit of white space, and that's okay because the idea is definitely there that this is hair. In fact, I'm going to take this opportunity to draw a couple extra lines just to sort of thicken out that curve where the hair sort of twirls around itself. And again, that was just a bunch of lines sort of following the shape of the hair. And I just did it a bunch of times over and over again until the hair was pretty well colored in like that. Of course, you're welcome to just color it all in totally black, and that would be fine too. Now, why don't we just do a couple more things. First, we're going to kind of create the some features on the front of the genie's body here so that you can tell it sort of has a person's body. So it's sort of like its chest, and then we'll do kind of like its abs. So we'll do a line down and then two kind of lines to the side, do another line down, two other kinds of lines to the side, and then how about one more line down. It's kind of a buff genie, right? We'll do two lines right like that for its chest, and so you can see we have some features there. You could draw muscles, on the arms too if you wanted. We're not going to worry about that for today. But now why don't we do some lines to create some wrinkles in the belt here, kind of like that. And then let's just connect them to the side. And that sort of helps show how there's wrinkles in there. And now, of course, a genie we often think of as coming out of a lamp, right? So if we come down here to the bottom, let's just draw that real quick. I'm going to do an oval kind of off to the side. Now we're going to take that and do a similar kind of S shape as we see some other times here, where you kind of come down and then up, and that's going to be sort of where the tip of the lamp is that the genie's coming out of. I'm just going to draw a slight line for the tip there, kind of like an elephant's trunk, and then we'll kind of come back with a big arc that is just going to wrap around the top of that. And then we'll do a handle, which is going to be an upside down U, and then we'll flare out a little bit, and then come back. And then let's just do a little parallel kind of arc around the bottom with two attaching lines like that. And then this is the thing that you would grab to pull the lid off of it. And that's a lamp for our genie. And at that point, your genie is pretty well done. You're welcome to continue adorning it. I think I'm going to, just for a second here, take a look at what I do. So you can see there's just some trim on his vest. And I'm going to do these weird sort of spiral things around his hands. If you don't want to do this part, that's all right, because, you know, frankly, I wasn't sure how it would look. But that's sort of, I imagine, the wind kind of twirling around his hands as he sort of floats in the air. So at that point, let's take our eraser and let's erase our extra lines and see what we're looking at. You know, most of the time we've been erasing our lines sooner, but they stuck with us all the way to the end today. So that was a tough one, huh? There's a lot to that, but you know, our finished drawing looks pretty cool, I think. And again, we call this a djinn or a genie, which is just one type of a genie. I'll show you how that's spelled because it's kind of weird. So a djinn, or we can call it a genie with an I, which sort of sounds like the word genie, right? But remembering these are air genies, and that genies from other elements are going to look a little bit different. So way to go, everyone. That's going to be our fantastic beast for today. What's your genie's name? Most genies have names, and they oftentimes have magic. Obviously, you know, we think of them as casting wishes. What wish would you ask for from a genie? Feel free to let us know. And as always, feel free to show us how your drawing came out. We'd love to see it. Even if it doesn't look quite like mine, that's totally fine. Your fantastic beast is just as cool. So thanks for watching, and don't forget to check us out next week for our final fantastic beast, sort of the classic of all fantastic beasts. See if you can guess what it is. I'll see you then. Bye.